Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Secrets of a Witch podcast with me, Sabrina Scott. And on this podcast, I talk all about life, love, healing, spirituality, witchcraft, magic, tarot, mediumship, feminine energy, and everything in between. We like to keep it interesting, up in here, and complicated, because life is complicated and it's not all just one note or one song. We might be witchy, we might be spiritual, and yet we are still human beings living life, having our ups and downs, and just existing as one does. So, for today's episode, this is for all the single ladies. Everyone else can, ignore me today. Sorry, not sorry. But what I wanted to talk about today is a norm I've seen in dating. There's a bunch of these norms that bother me, but today I'm going to talk about the norm of going for drinks as a date. And obviously I've done this. Obviously, literally everyone alive pretty much has done this. If you are in a culture that involves drinking, maybe if you live in a place where there's no alcohol, or you don't drink for religious reasons or health reasons or sobriety reasons, we all have our reasons. But I think a lot of folks have gone on drink dates. It's just a very normalized thing. That is kind of the first suggestion as a single lady that everyone makes in my direction, as I have been dating for the past few years. And it's so interesting. And I don't do drink dates. There was a time when I would, but the time is long gone. Especially as a first few dates, I just don't ever do that. It's a no from me. So let me explain why, because I think it's so interesting. A lot of the reactions from people outside my sphere are shocked, clutching their pearls. And obviously this isn't for everyone. There are some people for whom they're oh my God, you want to eat food as well. You don't want just drinks. You must be a gold digger, or you must be trying to bleed me dry, or whatever fucking crazy bullshit. And obviously those people are just not a match for me or anyone reasonable. So good riddance. And that is okay with me. But there's a lot of people out there. And since I'm dating men right now, a lot of men are yeah, absolutely. Let's do dinner. No problem. Love it. I also love to eat. And it's great. Food is so important to me. And so personally sharing food with someone is just spiritual, fun, interesting activity. I'm not someone who eats to live. I definitely live to eat. It is one of my biggest pleasures. And so on one hand, it's okay, obviously it's a fun activity. I love experimenting with new restaurants. I love eating. I love anything and everything food related. So that's, part one of this, why I love going out for dinner with people. But part two of this is my ladies, my single ladies. Listen carefully. Why would you want to go out with a man who wants to get you drunk but does not want to nourish you? Let me say that again. Why would you want to go out with a man who is happy to get you wasted, so your inhibitions are down, so you're less able to assess him and who he is and judge him accurately as if he's a good person or not, as if he's a safe person or not? When we drink, our sexual inhibitions, if I can say that word, go down. So even if you weren't planning on sleeping with somebody, you might be convinced at, late nights after a bunch of drinks, happens to all of us at some point, if we're not being really intentional about it, if we don't have boundaries, and especially if we ate a long time ago. Food is nourishing. Food is nourishing. Alcohol is not nourishing. Alcohol is delicious and fun. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love a good glass of wine, especially over dinner. But alcohol ultimately, it's a social lubricant, right? So it's going to put your inhibitions down. It's going to cloud your judgment. And, you know, the maximum number of drinks, like, without any food should really only be like 2. You know, especially for women. After that, it kind of gets a bit foggy, you know, if there's no snacks involved to kind of soak up that alcohol. And I think a lot of people know this, and it's just not the vibe. It's not the vibe, my friends. And so sometimes people will be like, you know, like I said, like sometimes I would get a clap back, or it's like, you know, making some kind of snarky comment financially related. And it's like, well, if we're going to take this logically, like, dinner is the cost of 1 or 2 drinks anyway. So it all works out to the same amount of money regardless. But it's so interesting, right? Like, if anyone ever does clap back at you ladies, when you say, you know what, it would feel so good to go for dinner with those drinks. I love to eat. It's not about having a free meal. That's the thing, right? I love to cook. I love eating. I'm sure you also probably love to cook. And if you don't love to cook, whatever, it's okay. We're all different, and that's beautiful. But you can't see it as that, right? Like, you can, but it's not a healthy way to see it. Like, oh, I'm just going to go out with someone for a free meal. That's not the energy that you should be approaching this, ladies. And whenever men say, oh, you just want a free meal, you know that you can just cut them off because their mindset is jaded, because they're clearly operating from a hurt and wounded space, or just a very suspicious, dodgy space. You know, like, they're already suspicious of you. They're already accusing of being a user, right? Which is fucking bizarre, like, weird. And so whenever people respond that way, that is a big red flag that you should cut off communication, not see that person. Because they clearly have some kind of internal wounding that they need to heal before they're able to really meet someone with their heart in a good way, authentically, right? And so if someone just wants to get drinks with you, my beautiful ladies who are single, I would really, like, think twice about that. Like, obviously, do what you want. I'm not here to, like, order anyone around. But what I do know is that it is more fruitful. It is more safe. It is more peaceful. It is more healthy to spend time with people who are happy to nourish us, who aren't jumping to, oh my God, you're just going to take advantage of me. You're just going to use me. You know, weird. What a weird way to see the world. Food is grounding. And I've talked a lot about this in previous episodes of this podcast. Food is spiritual. Food is grounding. Food connects us to the earth. It grounds us in our body. When I used to, back in a million years ago, practice with some different covens, no matter which coven I was in, we would always end every single ritual by a feast, by eating, to ground the energy. And so just like eating can ground the energy when it's up and around doing its own thing in a ritual, when it's heightened, just like it's heightened on a date usually, it can ground us and connect us to our body. Because when we're eating, we have to pay attention to our senses. What is our stomach doing? What is our taste buds doing? What does it smell like? And when we're in our body, activating all these different sensory aspects of what it is to be alive, we're also more in touch with how we feel emotionally. Do we like this person? Do we feel safe with this person? Did that person just say something very weird that made us feel a little bit uncomfortable? Or do we feel heard? Do we feel safe? Do we feel respected? You know? And if all someone wants to do is drink with you and get you wasted, they probably don't have the best of intentions. And maybe you're going through a phase where that's all you want as well. And like, if that's the case, YOLO, you're listening to the wrong podcast. But, I respect whoever's choices, like whatever, do your thing. But what I'm trying to explain here is there's another way to go about it. And I'm sure a lot of you ladies already know this, but there's going to be others of you out there who are new to this kind of thinking, who are new to this idea that like, hold on, you mean I can actually go for dinner as a first date? Really? And that's like a thing that happens? Like, yes, my friend. Yes, it is. And so, maybe you don't want to eat around someone, whatever, like we all have our stuff. But my point here is that this should be an experience that is ultimately nourishing for you. And when something like dating or whatever, getting to know someone is just based on intoxication, whether that's sexual intoxication, alcoholic intoxication, I don't mean like addiction alcoholic, I mean just like the alcoholic beverage intoxication, whether that's smoking, and we all know that I personally don't do drugs of any type, like I'm very anti-drugs, but do you, no judgment towards anyone else, it's just how I live. But if you're bonding with someone over just being intoxicated on weed or whatever, you're not really fully getting to know that person. And you're also not really fully 100% yourself unless you're able to just maintain that sober, nourished space. Does that mean I'm not going to have a glass of wine or two with dinner? Like, no, I obviously will. I'm happy to try my wine with dinner. But my point here is that through eating a giant meal and having wine eventually, it's like I'm able to kind of moderate that, right? Like where I can still stay in my right mind. Like even if I've had a drink or two, I can still enforce and communicate a boundary. I can still call someone if they're being dishonest or if they said something hurtful or ignorant, or if someone is being too touchy or too presumptuous. Because if we're drinking too much or smoking too much or whatever, then we are actually putting ourselves in a position where it's harder, unless we've decided before we go out that night, it can be harder to stay true to what our boundaries actually are in the sober light of the morning. And so to avoid betraying and abandoning your own self and betraying and abandoning your own boundaries, I really do recommend making sure that you are nourished whenever it is you are having a dating experience, so that the experience is based on nourishing together and being nourished together through good conversation, but also good food to keep our bodies alive and healthy, to keep our bodies moving, right? It's important. And so if anyone is listening to this being like, oh my God, but I only do drink dates, like my beautiful friend, whoever you are, who needs to hear this, please stop giving your time to people who will not nourish you. And I mean this literally and metaphorically. Is your soul nourished? Is your mind nourished? Is your body nourished? Or do you just feel out of sorts and kind of drunk and kind of intoxicated? When do you feel best? When and around who do you feel most nourished? Around who do you feel most dehydrated? Right? It's just something I like to throw out there for y'all to consider for today. I hope this is helpful to somebody or somebody's, plural, hopefully. And I think when you frame it this way, this idea of being nourished, I think it really can have the power to change everything. And it can help us all see a little bit easier, like what is really going on. Are we being nourished by a person, by a situation? Or are we being put in a compromising situation where it's a little bit harder to hear the heartbeat of our own intuition? So that's it, my friends. That's the episode for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're offended, well, I don't know what to say, but this is just my opinion based on all the different lives that I've lived. So there you go. Anyway, you can catch me on YouTube at youtube.com/Sabrina Scott. I did some lives this week, so do go and give those a rewatch. Just click the live button and do not forget to subscribe. Of course, my website is sabrinamscott.com. You can buy a cute hoodie or something like that at shopsabrinamscott.com. We are in sweater season right now, so honestly, it's cozy time right now, you guys. Anyway, my Instagram is at Sabrina M. Scott, so say hi on Instagram as well if you want. And of course, mark your calendars for Feminine Energy Without Bullshit launching on November 13th. And then, of course, my Black Friday sale just after that. I think it's the 25th is the Friday. Feminine Energy Without Bullshit will be open for enrollment until November 22nd. Okay, friends, talk to you guys soon. Bye.